Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Pod. My name is Belle and I am the marketing director here at AC Inc. And oh my gosh, guys, it is the start of season 3 of the Franchise Growth Pod. Season 3. Oh, that's 6. I'm holding up 2 threes. We got season 3 coming in hot. We're so excited. And maybe most excited, our number one fan, Angela, is here today. Ange, welcome back.
Yes, I am the number one fan. That is so true. Remember last time I was saying that I get so excited to listen to these episodes when they're not me. So this is backwards because I won't listen to this one necessarily. Well, I probably will, but I get more excited listening to the team.
You are.
So
And
fun.
in fact, it actually is the cutest thing. Angela will in real time text me and go, "Oh my gosh, I love the recent episode." And she'll like go comment on the post. It's really cute. It honestly makes all of our days. And I will actually start off today, Angela. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. I will actually start off with a bit of like an announcement as to what's going on with season 3, because so we've been doing this podcast for years, but in the past year and a half ish, we had our season 2 of the podcast, which is when we transformed it into a team focused podcast. So the AC Inc. team is providing education and training for field support and franchisee proactive coaching for brands across North America and the globe. We were just talking about that actually. And part of our podcast is obviously providing tangible action steps, conversational information all about our franchisee support, field coaching, field franchisee growth, all of those awesome things. And as season 2 kind of kicked us off doing, we really got the whole team involved to share all of their insights as opposed to just me and Angela going back and forth. So season 3, not much has changed, don't worry. But a couple fun little updates have been made just in terms of our intro, our outro. Our cover got a little bit of a refresh, but the actual value that you're going to get in every episode is the same. We're getting really deep into some awesome topics in the next couple months here. And we're going to start off with an amazing episode with you today, Ange.
Uh-oh, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. This is the very first episode of season 3, so we got to make it good.
And
Um,
you said it's amazing, it's going to be amazing, and we don't know yet. So time will tell.
I trust it will be amazing. I really do.
Okay.
So I've been hosting the podcast ever since we launched season 2. So to be able to move it into a new season has been so fun. And I'm really excited. We have a bunch of really great interviews planned over the next 2 or 3 months. We kind of batch a few months in advance to try to make sure we have lots and lots of value packed in. And we have some really good chats coming up, but I'm very excited for this one. We're going to hear a bunch of Angela's story. We're going to hear a little bit just on the more vulnerable side too, about like launching new things, stepping into new opportunities, facing new challenges, something that I think is applicable to not just franchisors and leaders, but franchisees and employees and team members, and so many roles. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I do want to start off with our new intro that we are going to do, which is I'm going to ask everyone on the team and all of our clients and community that comes on the podcast, I'm going to ask everyone a bit of like an icebreaker question. So, Angela, are you ready?
I'm so nervous about this. I always like being put on the spot. I always get really nervous. And like anytime I'm interviewed on somebody else's podcast and then they throw a question at me, I'm like, ah. So, okay, hit me.
Okay, get ready. I have not prepped Angela. So let's see what she says. And these are all going to be a little bit different. And it's just a fun way to kind of get to know the team, get to know the community a little bit better, and then dive into our content for the day. So your icebreaker question, Ange, is do you have a least favorite food and what is it? Because some people I feel like are a little bit more picky eaters. Some people eat whatever. I'm really curious. I don't even know the answer to this.
Okay, well, the funny thing is nothing jumped into my head that like, oh, I have the best answer here.
Hmm.
But what I could tell you that would be a little bit of a surprise is that I'm not a big meat eater. Like I don't love meat.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, so my dad started a meat, it started with mostly meat, M&M meat shops.
Yeah.
And if it didn't matter what I ate, it was all the same nutrition or whatever, I would not be biting into juicy steaks and things like that all the time. Even though I grew up with it, I'm very lucky, like we got to test some pretty good product. But I gravitate towards more of like, and it's not, I shouldn't admit it, but like the carbs and vegetables and fresh and whatever. But the worst was when I had to hide that from my dad when I was 18. I had stopped eating meat completely for, I don't know, like a year or two. And I was like, yeah, eventually I had to tell him. And but anyway, I had a plan. I was like, I can still sell the product. I can still talk about it. It's just a personal choice right now. And anyway, but then eventually the reason I went back to it is because I was training for a marathon, and I was really feeling off, and I was actually craving like not just beans and the other things you can get protein from, but meat. So I started eating it again, but it's not my favorite thing. I just eat it because I should.
Yeah, and I think that's actually it's not the craziest thing anymore either, to be getting protein from like all different sources. But
Totally.
I have really learned, and like even just chatting with different friends and colleagues and stuff, that people just also kind of feel good on different things. Like I know lots of people who have given it up for other reasons, but I also know a lot of people have given it up because it just doesn't make them feel good, or some people go back to it, as you said, because they actually feel a bit better when they're eating more meat and dairy products. So I think it's a really interesting topic of like you know how you how
Yeah.
your body feels best, and then also people give up foods for all kinds of reasons now. So it's almost like you were ahead of the trend, is what I'm.
Maybe, but just to be clear too, I'm not saying people should eat or shouldn't eat meat or anything like that, and I'm not saying it's the best thing for you. But for me, I find when it comes to getting enough protein, I find it helpful to have that as part of what I eat. So, and
Yeah.
anyway, that's my answer, my long-winded answer for what I couldn't think of anything else that nothing else jumped out at me that I
That's
really
so
like.
not at all a picky eater. Like there's no
I
like.
mean, I like to be easygoing. I mean, I certainly have my favorites, but I just like to be easygoing as much as I can and suck it up. I'm actually one of those people that I'll eat things that are very healthy but don't taste good just for the sake of it, like greens that I don't like the taste of, or smoothies that I think are okay, or oil of oregano I take when I'm starting to feel a little bit sick and it's super raunchy, but I almost look at it like I'm winning because it's like I
Yeah,
just
oil of oregano is actually very not good.
no,
I agree
but
though,
it's good for you.
it does really make you feel better. Yeah, if you're kind of heading into getting sick or your immune system's
Yeah.
up, whatever. But yeah, it is really not good. That's actually really funny.
Yeah, it's
Well,
pretty raunchy.
I've learned a couple things about you today.
There you go.
Ran marathons and prefer not to eat meat, which actually is really interesting. And I didn't know that about you. And are not that picky of an eater. But I did know you love like a protein bar and like a shake and stuff. So I kind of knew that. Well, that is our first ever little icebreaker on the podcast. So that's really fun. Thanks for being the first, Ange. And I'm actually thinking that your comment about your dad and M&M Meats and having to come to him and be like, Dad, I promise I can still sell product is a great intro into what we're going to talk about today. So what I wanted to get you on the podcast to chat about is a little bit more of your story. And I think a lot of people know kind of the very, very beginnings story. We share it a lot on our website and in our social and on other podcasts. We've done really big deep dives into your dad was the founder of M&M Food Markets, formerly Meat Shops, and you grew up in franchising. And that's often the part we really hone in on and talk a lot more about. Just, you know, you worked at grand openings as a kid and then worked in the store, and, you know, you became a field coach and became a multi-unit franchisee. And we have all this really, really cool growing up in franchising story that we dive into a lot. But this is something that kind of extends that story. And we've actually been getting a lot of questions about more recently from people just kind of reaching out and going, how did Angela, you know, look at the franchise industry and, you know, with all your growing up in franchise background, how did you kind of look at that as you were an adult and had multi-unit franchise units? But how did you kind of look at this industry and realize that there was a solution you could provide that not a lot of people were providing? And that is, of course, the franchisee support, and specifically the proactive coaching and business coaching for franchisees, or field support, as we call it. And it's something that is really interesting because I've heard you share the story with me personally, but I wanted to get it on the podcast because it's really inspiring the way that you kind of navigated through a very different point in your life to starting AC Inc. and then even discovering this solution that you could provide and that your expertise could build a team around. And anyway, I've been talking for too long, but I just wanted to provide a bit of context because it is something that we haven't really dove into before. Is this part of your story?
Actually, I'm really excited about this because I really do believe that people can do more than they think they can a lot of the time. Like they get stumped. And as you were asking that, I was like, where am I going to start? And I like what's most important. And I think something that's really important here for people to know is that I didn't even start with going, okay, I have this franchise background, what should I do with it? It actually started with me realizing I was restless and needed to do something different. My husband was running our stores, our kids were getting a bit older, and I was actually trying to get away from franchising and away from retail because I wanted to go do something different. I wanted to change. I don't know. There was something in me.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing I think is that I felt something in my gut that I listened to then go explore what else could I do. And when I went out exploring, what I did was, networking in my local community. I actually hired someone to help me do some sessions to think through what I'm good at, like, which I recommend. It sounds like, people might be like, well, I got to spend money. Well, look where it can lead you. Like, it leads you to where you want to be. So as I was going through that process, though, thinking like maybe I could go work, I don't know, something totally different or whatever. I just felt like I had to go do something, but I had no idea what. But it was in doing that, and that's why action equals growth is such a big core value at AC Inc. It was in going out and going to networking events, which, by the way, like, I would show up. I remember going to one in Victoria here called at Fort Tectoria, the tech community. Every Friday they had like this like social in the afternoon, and I would go to it, and I'd be by myself. Like, what am I doing? Like, I did. Yes, I'm I'm a networker and all that, but I was stepping into a room of people where I knew like zero. But I was definitely out of my comfort zone. But I believe that if I do this, it's gonna help me figure this out. And I mean, I'm not going to figure this out by sitting around just thinking. So I went into that room. I went into those kinds of places. And what happened is people would say, so what's your story? And I'd be like, well, I'm just trying to figure out what to do next in my life. I really like, and I talked about things I like. I like, people, I like teaching, I like training. When I reflected on what I liked in my past, I would say those things. And they're like, well, what is your most recent experience? And I was trying to hide the M&M story, but then it would come out. And what happened was they're like, well, wait a minute, your dad owns M&M. You must know a lot about franchising. Or like, your dad's the founder of M&M Eat Shops, which for the Americans and everyone else on the call and globally, whatever, it became an iconic Canadian brand. So everyone in Canada pretty much had heard of this thing. So they were like, wait, that's a successful franchise. You must know something. So then it was over time, people just saying, why don't you go help the franchise community or franchise industry with what you've learned? And so I want to be very clear that it wasn't like I was this, like, I want to be an entrepreneur. What can I be an entrepreneur and do? What's the service I can provide? None of that. I was like ready to go take a job or ready to do whatever I needed to do and just do the next thing and use my skills. But then it was like the world told me, and I decided to listen to that. And when I reflected on like where I wanted to go with things, I just really reflected on, okay, the more I looked at other franchise companies and realized actually getting to almost 500 locations, that's a bigger deal than I realized.
Yeah.
What did we do different? So I really reflected on that. And so then realized that there was something special about the franchisee-franchisor relationship at M&M. And you can talk to a lot of franchisees that were franchisees back in the day when my dad was still, the president before he sold the company. And that will tell you that my dad really, it was about understanding that dynamic and interesting and important relationship. So I was like, I got to go teach that. So not that I knew then what to do, but I'll just pause the story there because that's like all it was me going, okay, once I got clear on what my skill set was, I can go help people. Okay, well, I'm going to need a business card and I should probably get some kind of a website. So I invest a little bit of money and started showing up at these franchising conferences and events, and had to no, I did not, I didn't know what I was going to be doing, but I asked questions and it was tough, but it was tough, but worth it because I was like, the minute I was in that seat or that not seat, but like in that room of the franchise people, I was like, oh, this feels right. Something feels right about this. So I trusted my gut. And, at that point, I thought I was just going to be like a part-time business consultant in franchising. So that's how we got to that point. I'll stop there because that was probably a lot. And I'm going to grab a sip of my soda water.
Nice. Definitely get hydrated. That was amazing. There are already so many things that are going through my head. And I think the big takeaway so far, from your story, just that I'm taking from what you're sharing is definitely the not needing to know exactly what the plan is going to be right off the bat. And instead, like I heard you mention trusting your gut, right? So going with what felt right. So if you entered into a room or had a really good conversation, you're like, this feels good. Like what we were talking
Yes.
about feels good. Follow that. Yeah, continue moving towards those things is like what feels good.
Explore it. I'll just jump
Yes.
in with explore it. And you might get a little further and realize actually, no, that's not it. I had a bunch of um missed stop or like hard or stops, like stops and starts, starts and
Yeah.
stops. It was like I thought it might like there, I didn't tell you all the details. There were things I went and tried to do, like work with this tech guy and be his business development person for sweat equity. And it was in doing that I realized, nope, this isn't it.
Mm.
So like explore, go where it feels good, explore it, and then you'll get a sense. So I know I jumped in on your takeaways. You were giving
No,
your
no,
takeaways.
but that actually speaks to another thing that you were just mentioning, which is the um not then being afraid to move to something else, right? So, not like giving up on projects, like don't think about it that way, but instead, again, like understand when you're in your exploration phase of like, maybe I'm going to try this, maybe I'm going to try this. And that I've even seen people do that with side hustles. I've seen people look into, is franchising the right model, or is corporate, or is becoming a manager, like people needing to explore the right options. I think this honestly applies to Friend Dev a lot too, like having franchisees even understanding potential leads, like where are they at? Are they exploring, or are they like, no, I'm for sure, I know this is my direction? Because that plays into, your process as well. But yeah, definitely not being afraid to kind of test things out. And that's action equals growth at its core, which is of course why we built a company off of that value. But yeah, and I had one other thing I was going to say. Back at the beginning, you were talking about oh, putting yourself out there. So being, and again, you weren't like looking to work in tech necessarily, but seeing what your options are in terms of making connections and then going and doing those things, even if it might not align perfectly with what your vision is, because you really do truly know, you truly never know, sorry, who it is you're going to connect with. Like that's, I'm hearing a
Yeah.
couple of those kind of common threads through that story, which I think is so real. I just know that, no matter what point you're at in terms of your career journey or your business journey or your leadership journey, like being able to go into spaces and connect with people, even if it doesn't feel like the perfect space to do it. It doesn't have to be an exact conference on the exact, topic that you want to go into.
And
Um,
I actually wonder if someone had said, "Oh, you should go to a franchise conference," before I felt that, if that would have had the same impact. Like it was because I did all these things and felt what I didn't want, and then when okay, I'm still looking, and then when I did go to a franchise conference, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is my people. This is I'm around a room full of people that need the thing that I know," and like
it
so
felt
you
good.
have
Yeah.
again, it's like you say, action, taking action, being curious
Mm.
and exploring. Yeah,
And I think, I mean, one thing I've done in the past too is you mentioned a bit about like really knowing what makes you happy, what you know a lot about, what you're excited about. And it doesn't even need to be, as you said, you didn't think it was going to be franchising initially. In fact, you thought maybe it was going to be more about the business development or more about coaching and consulting, right? So it was more on that side and wasn't even really focused on franchising initially, when you were kind of in this transitional point. And that's actually one thing I think is really important. You mentioned that you hired a coach to kind of help walk you through that. But I also think like, if coaching isn't available, for whatever reason, I've actually also done the writing out your skills, like writing out things
yeah.
that you're good at, but then also writing out things that interest you and that you maybe want to get better at, or spaces you want
Mm.
to go explore. So not just narrowing down to, I have to be a coder in order to be interested in development and coding or apps or whatever that, the next step is.
Hmm.
I think just, yeah, thinking about what it is you're good at, what your experience is, jotting down all those things, but then also what makes you excited. That sounds like that's what drove this whole process a little bit, is what felt good, what was your
Yeah.
skill set, but then also what got you like excited and feeling, happy in the space that you're in. And that's where we get to the next point in the story, which is you are kind of entering into franchising and you have this skill set and you feel good in the rooms you're in and the conversations you're having. What kind of happens after that? Like, do you like enter into the franchise space and go, okay, I'm providing some insight and some skill and helping people do a bit better? And is that when you kind of spotted the the field coach aspect? Like where did that next step go? Because that's where we get a lot of questions, is like, how do I find the thing within the space that I'm in or within the space I want to go that makes sense? Like, how do I find this service or solution or product that I can really thrive in? Like, how do you get to that point?
Well, I was gonna, it's more action equals growth, more taking action. But like it's funny because as you were talking, I was just flashing back to my earliest days, and I found some local people that were franchisors that were just starting out, or one that was like just starting out, and one that had maybe 30 something franchisees. And I started meeting with them and saying, can I just meet with you and find out what your needs are? And to be very clear, like just a minute ago, you're like, okay, you kind of knew you had the skill set. I only knew that because people told me I did. I really didn't believe it. Like I was like doubting myself, but I was like, okay.
Do you think that the doubt though, and we just, I mean, we didn't actually get super deep into the transition point that you were in. You did mention it at the beginning of your story there, but you were at a point where you had grown up in franchising, had done a lot of really incredible things in franchising. I don't want you to be too humble on that. You brought a franchise to a brand new place, did extremely well. You had worked in coaching, you at a very young age, like you had really excelled in this space, and then you became a mom and you really thrived in that. And then you were kind of at this point, as you said, where kids are getting a bit older. You're going, okay, now my husband's been running these stores and doing great, and I'm not needed in the way I was. So do you think that doubt came more from you maybe feeling also a little lost in where you needed
Oh
to
yeah.
land? Or do you think it was like, maybe once you had more conversations, you felt more confident because you have so much to share. And I'm just curious how that doubt could have creeped in at that point.
Um, oh yeah, there was so much doubt when I first started that process. Like I think you've heard me maybe say in the past, like I was like, I'm just a mom. I'm a franchisee of a business my dad founded. Um, I've really mostly only worked in the company. I've done a couple other things, but not a lot. Who's going to hire me? Who's going to want me to, whether that's as a consultant, at that time I wasn't even going there, but it was more the like, who would hire me even for a job? I don't even know. I'm like, do people still use Excel spreadsheets? Like I was thinking of the technology that I knew from when I was more tuned in, like really involved in the business. And I was thinking like, what do I know? So yeah, my self-doubt was high. And I do think, I guess I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but it was this is what was really important to me. I was actually just going to say this earlier. That a big part of why I needed somebody on the outside to help me, this coach that I hired, which again felt like a big investment, but was so worth it. But she had me do some exercises, like you just said, like the writing up the skills. One that she had me do that I encourage people to do, anybody that's thinking of like a career change of any sort, is go to your network and talk to like 5 to 10 people and ask them, what do you see as what I'm good at? And you could, anybody from, your partner, your spouse, your sister or brother, to somebody you used to work with, to somebody you volunteer with in the community, to your running friend. And
Yeah.
like, what are some of the things that was so helpful for me to get that, like, what are people seeing in me? And then in that, then I would also ask them, what do you see me doing? And they all just kept saying this. These are people in my network already saying, I see you doing this. So I had a lot of self-doubt that I needed to overcome, and like confidence I needed to build. And I think the key point there is to recognize that if you have that self-doubt, like where's it coming from? And like those are some steps to kind of help get beyond it, and then getting really clear on like what does get you excited. And I think I might have derailed things right there with my
Oh
but
gosh, not at all. No,
okay, well,
I think that's actually so key too when you were talking about the break, like when you took a break and then had kind of been doing something so different. I think a lot of people can relate in terms of either taking a break from the entrepreneurial side of their journey, or taking a break career wise. I know is also very common. And again, life happens, like it all shifts, and then having to come back into business or entrepreneurship or franchising, or just new opportunities, new things in general, when you haven't done that for so long, you can have, and as you just listed, like you just almost flipped on its head all the things that I was saying so positively about your experience and your skill set and
exactly.
knowledge.
You
And
made it sound
you were just looking at it in this completely different way. And I think that's what a lot of people go through when they're hitting those, like, I have to try something new, or I'm diving into this new thing. And it's that can be really tough. And I loved your tip on it. And I think we've shared it on the podcast maybe once before, like way back in season one, but that strategy of asking people around you kind of what their perception is, and just being really open to hearing lots of different answers. And because again, it's not even always what you think, it's also sometimes and you've even mentioned that a couple times here, as far as like what advice would you give to someone who's taking on a new thing, getting feedback, getting thoughts from other people, and not just being in your own little bubble and making all these decisions and all these choices and stuff just on your own, because you might be missing out on like a totally different perspective. Or, and again, it doesn't have to be necessarily from a coaching agency or anything. It could also be, as you just said, like people in your network, people people you've worked with in the
Well,
past.
like
I think that's
you
so
look up to that have figured something out, go to
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, I kind of started saying this earlier, that so I found these couple of franchisors in my network, and I was offering sweat equity to them because, or charging very little. In doing that, um, again, like I thought I already had this insecurity, but I was like, well, I got to figure this out. And people told me I know stuff. So what do I know? I don't know what I know. Even in doing that, out of the two stories of these two different people, one of them, I did this meeting with them. I was trying to provide value, and I basically got shut down. And I was offering
Wow.
free insights. And if I look back at what I was saying to them, I could probably find those notes somewhere, because I'm just that type of person. I keep stuff because it's sometimes sentimental or whatever. But I could probably find it, and I would probably not say necessarily a whole lot different. I was probably just too high level. I was probably not giving them action steps, or something was missing. I don't know. I should probably go try to find out. But I remember thinking, I can't do this. Like this, I can't do this. So like the point is, again, like you said, it's not like I had this vision and I knew exactly what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. It was in doing these things that I had to like figure it out. And I tried to just always look at that as, okay, it was a learning experience. And then focusing on, where was I feeling more positive with the things
Yeah.
that I was trying to do, and focus more on that. But like, yeah, I don't want people to think like, if I don't know if it looks like, oh, you guys have it all figured out. Like, no, like we're always figuring it out. And it started with a lot of, having to put myself out there, but learn so much because of it. So worth it.
I think that's one of the big key takeaways in this conversation is exactly that. Like there's so many already, but definitely the listening to your gut, the trying new things, and being always open to the learning and figuring it out as you move forward, and actually to refocus us back on your path that we took
Yeah.
up on detour. But talking back or getting back into talking about the transition from you realizing franchising and sharing your expertise in the industry was actually something you were really excited about and were genuinely, feeling focused and bringing value, once you got past the point of offering up free service and them still saying no, which I think, let's be real, is really tough. It's really hard to hear. And I think it's really important to hear people in awesome leadership positions share more.
I just to be clear, I cried.
I
I
would
did cry.
Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Oh my gosh. But I think it's so important to hear more people share about those experiences, because as we hear more of that, you realize that as you go through that, you're not different than these people. You're kind of, you're a bit of a LinkedIn influencer or whatever. Like if people are kind of looking at these leaders in these different industries, I think it's really important to remember we have all had a meeting where we cry really hard after, like, and in fact, we probably have had a lot. Like, let's be real. But getting back to again, that question we kind of do get asked often is, you being in the industry, being in the space, knowing you have some skills to bring, feeling a bit more confidence as you start to have more successful conversations. I don't know if actually everyone knows, if you haven't been along for the AC Inc. ride. We actually started out very, very small years and years ago, focusing in on helping franchise brands grow. And you were really just helping people one-on-one in coaching and consulting, started to build a small team around that. And then we actually discovered, and discovered is probably the wrong word, but that's where I'm hoping I can get your insight from that perspective of seeing the solution that we could provide better than anyone else, right? So not just, you sharing just your skills, but actually scaling this to improve the industry at large, improve franchisees' success, improve local business owners' performance and growth and all these amazing things through that franchisee support, proactive field coaching. And that didn't just happen right off the bat. Like that was learning,
Mhm.
that was growth, that was trying new things and opening up with different services. And how do you think you connected all the dots? Because you actually have worked as a field coach in a franchise before, which is again where a lot of our method comes from, is a lot of the lessons you've learned, a lot of expertise from different members of the team. But how did you make those connections? Because that's where we get a lot of questions from people who want to start new solutions or services or businesses. They go, "How did you connect all those dots and decide this was the way that was
Mm.
going to make sense?"
Well, again, it was like when you do a dot to dot and you go from one to, like, when you say connect the dots, like
Yeah.
literally think about like each dot and then eventually the picture was there.
Mhm.
So when I first started knowing that I wanted to help in franchising, a big thing for me that helped a lot was going to conferences.
Mhm.
And I had to invest. I wasn't making money at that point. And I mean, we had some income coming in from our stores, but it was also me saying, like, I'm going to make this happen because I'm like, once I got going, I could feel it. Like, I was like, I can do this. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to make something happen here. I was getting sort of clues from the world to keep going. So, but it was definitely a lot of education that helped. Like, so going to these conferences and listening to what were people doing and going, I could have been the one on that panel because that's what we did at M&M.
Yeah.
So there was getting refreshed on education, making sure I was up to date, and hearing what was out there, and then so within that, like surveying the landscape
Yeah.
of what was already out there, but also again really reflecting on when I reflected on what we did well at M&M, and I knew it had to do with franchisee. Um, Being engaged with the brand, loving the brand, all that. I was like, well, how did we do that? And how do you do that? And it comes from the person, it starts with the person in the field that's directly related or like directly working with the franchisee. And I was like, well, if that's the thing that's where it should start, then I would reflect on, well, you know, what are brands doing? And then I would find out, well, they're just they have is compliance managers. Well, that's not motivating. I remember being a franchisee and someone would come and talk to me about compliance. That's the last thing I like. Okay, yeah, my one staff member is not wearing her name tag today. I'll go talk to her about that. Like, but that's not
Yeah.
going to make or break my business. So it was a bunch of parts coming together. Along the way, though, I did, these things take time, and this is what I would encourage people to understand that we, even as a team, and I know you and I have recently reflected on this, that sometimes it takes a while. You kind of got to go a roundabout way to get there.
Mhm.
And for me, what happened was, I think because I was so new at being like a consultant, or I don't even like that word, let's just say a business advisor,
Mhm.
but that was new to me. So going in and realizing, okay, I want to help you with how you're supporting your franchisees. Tell me what you're currently doing. I'll look for gaps. But what I would find is often I was tended to bump into younger brands, emerging brands, and they would not be doing a good job of how who they pick to be franchisees and things. So, the roundabout way was going in and really learning the whole picture,
Mhm.
and then eventually stepping back or stepping away from that and going really back into the field support side. That was always where I believed I could bring people together to deliver value, but it was like I didn't know how to get there. So just again, it's the dot to dot, and then, oh, I'm starting to see the picture. Sometimes you make the line goes the wrong way, like erase it with an eraser.
And one thing that you just said there that I just really want to highlight, because it's kind of the culmination of everything you said, is you trying all the new things, going into conversation, all the stuff we talked about a couple minutes ago, but then taking time, which is what you just shared, taking time to step back and look at the dots connected. Because if you
Yeah.
don't take that time to kind of step back and look at everything you've learned and look and see, I loved what you said about really understanding the market, and not from like I just need to go look at these numbers and see what's available. Not necessarily that, but actually going and learning and getting back into the education space. And again, even if it's a space you know a lot about, like really taking time to understand the community that you're wanting to support, and what is it that people are struggling with? What is it that is already an option in terms of solutions? What's maybe not working for some people with those? Like really just diving deep, and then taking that step back and connecting all your lived experiences and your skills and all this information you've been learning, I'm really taking time to step back and reflect and connect it. Because if you don't do that, you're now still just in, and we talk about this all the time with franchisees becoming better business owners. They also need time to step back and reflect and work on their business, not just be in it day to day, struggling,
Mhm.
putting out fires as they come up. And that's where that field coaching comes in, is that's their time to take a step back and look at it. So without even trying, we've almost come full circle as to, the value of what it is that the solution we're so passionate about, but then also how you even got there, how you even got to realizing that this was the solution we could provide better than anyone else. And yeah, there's so much more I could dive into, but I know we're
I do
finishing up
have one
here.
thing I
I
have to
was
throw
gonna
in
say,
here also,
yeah,
just
yeah.
because it's really related to the how we got to where we are now. And that is also like somehow I feel like it's magic how I attracted the right people to the team. You being one of them, of course, early on, and those people that believed in what I was doing. So I think just again with the putting yourself out there and all that, and helping and making sure people understand what you're trying to do, and trusting that you can find those right people that like I would never 4 years ago, if you told me I'd be sitting here with a team of 11 people, I'd be like, how did I do that? How did I do it? I'd be like, okay, teach me. But it's again, it's the dot to dot. Like it's, oh, now wait a minute, there's this person that really loves what I'm doing, believes in me. Okay, wasn't planning on hiring, but we're going to figure it out. I'm bringing you on the team. I'm not sure how, let's figure this out together. And that's how we, have operated until now. So
Amazing. Well, Angela, I'm just so stoked we got a chance to dive deeper into this part of your story. I think it's such a powerful story, and you and I have talked about it at length off the podcast, and that's why I wanted to bring it on the air today because I just think it has so much value for any leader, any business person, any career change decision maker who's going through this process. I think that what you're sharing and being so real about is going to be really really impactful for anyone who is heading into anything new, or wanting to get into something new, and something to consider even from the lens of your potential franchisee leads, from that friend dev side, from the perspective of hiring a coach to come on your team or any team member. So I just think this is, yeah, very very impactful to anyone who's going through something new, or anyone who's trying to bring new people into their mission as well. So I just want to thank you so much for being so honest and sharing such an impactful part of your story. Um, is there anything else you wanna say before we finish up?
yeah, I just want people to remember that, like, this sounds so cliche, but I love this line. I think it might be John Maxwell. We win or we learn.
Mm,
So when those times that I could say that I failed or I learned, those things that I did that didn't work out, I learned something from them. So if you're always reflecting back, so if you're afraid and you're can't, just remember, like, you'll either win or you'll learn from it.
yeah, yeah, that's so powerful. I think about that often too. It's really important to keep in mind, like, there really is no such thing as absolutely failing, because from there is where you gather your next steps and your new information,
Yeah.
and you get better and better as you go. So thank you again, Ange. This was awesome. And thank you to everyone who's listening for kicking off season 3 with us. So fun. Do you want to do the honors?
Go be awesome.